All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is a Monday, and I got a lot to discuss, including, of course, what I did over the weekend, starting with a conference in New Jersey. Very nice little town there, Rutherford, New Jersey, just a mile or two, maybe west of East Rutherford, New Jersey, where the New York Giants, New York Jets, and other sports teams call their home. But Rutherford is a little small town, great Italian deli where I had lunch. I really enjoyed it. We'll talk about that conference that the Gray Zone hosted. I've got some clips as well. I didn't actually videotape it myself, but they posted on YouTube. So I've got a clip, including a section where I spoke at length after the panel discussion with the gentleman who made a statement that I found pretty questionable. So we'll get to that. The program, though, the main focus really is on how America has become even more so. And I've been talking about this really for probably close to 20 years at least since 10, 15 years ago. I don't know if when I first started on KRXA 540, I used the term seething cauldron to describe America, but that's what we are living. That's where we are living right now. We are living in a seething cauldron. The anger, it's boiling over. It's bubbling over. And I have video from a town hall last week, the aftermath at Wes Bell's town hall in St. Louis. Bell, an AIPAC-funded Democratic insurgent. He defeated Cory Bush, rather. I don't know who Cory Bell is. Maybe, I'm not sure. Cory Bush, perhaps the most outspoken non-Muslim representative against the Israeli genocide. And AIPAC was determined to defeat her. They found a pretty reasonably unknown prosecutor, Wes Bell, at least by some reports a Republican, and they gave him over $12 million to defeat Bush. He did so. He did a town hall. He went to Israel and he heard it from constituents, and he didn't take that, or at least his team, his security detail, and the St. Louis Police Department didn't take that lying down. They went pretty darn unhinged on constituents at the town hall. So we'll play clips from that, and including my, I don't know if I want to say astonishment, but just my notice that, this, I only learned about this just from browsing YouTube and looking through various videos of folks that I respect, because the corporate media, New York Times, which I do read somewhat religiously, I must admit, they didn't cover this. There's nothing in the New York Times. You'd think there would be. You think there'd be something on CNN. You think there'd be something on MSNBC. The reaction, the unhinged, the brutal reaction to the pro-peace movement, completely ignored by corporate media, by even so-called independent media like the New York Times. That is clearly a very, very significant canary in the coal mine that we don't have democracy. That when our police, when security details for Congress members attack brutally small women, toss them around like rag dolls, and our media doesn't even cover it, our national media won't cover it. These are people who were hired there to protect federal lawmakers, and they can act with that, or at least their staffers, they're deployed. They can deploy people to act with that kind of violence, and nobody even tells you about it. That means we don't have a democracy, folks. 240-242-5646. Please do subscribe if you haven't done so yet. I keep seeing more subscribers. We got a lot of viewers for at least the Mamdani video last week. Also, Friday Free For All did pretty well. So I'm somewhat heartened by that. I do think we do something here. You just don't get it elsewhere. And my conversation, even with Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone Saturday, kind of confirmed that we're doing something a little bit different. I love the Gray Zone. You should subscribe. They give you so much information, but we do something here just a little bit differently. By the way, join us on Facebook. You see it there. keep the conversation going 24/7. That's what we do on Facebook at Halitics. Click the thumbs up button, the like if you like what we're doing. And if you don't, click the thumbs down, but click something and also engage with commentary. I got a really negative comment. I can't remember what the remark was, but it was really negative. And I was like, good, I'm glad. Thank you for commenting. Tell me, but be specific. What is it you don't like? I think he said what a load this video is, or a load of BS or nonsense or something. So I'm like, well, what exactly? Give me some, maybe you say everything. Everything is BS. And well, I'm not going to go back and revisit everything. But if you had one or two specific critique, or what, even maybe you just listen for 30 seconds. You said, I'm not going to listen anymore. Well, why not? Tell me anything. Probably aren't hearing me say this, but any commentary, any feedback is valuable. Bibi Netanyahu, and I heard someone say you shouldn't call him that because it's sort of like an endearment, like his nickname. And I don't know. I mean, I guess I wouldn't call Donald Trump Don. I guess it's sort of the same. I don't know. But some people I call Trump Bush W sometimes. I don't know. Please, if you think I hold any endearment towards, or that I believe there's anything endearing about Netanyahu, no, he's a monster. He's a Nazi. He's as bad as they come. He's as evil as a person can possibly be. He's responsible for the greatest crime humans can commit. So there's nothing good or decent about him, but his name is very long and you can shorten it. So sometimes I do, but I'm going to be mindful of not using that diminutive to describe this evil creature. All right, death toll in Gaza. We have to feature that because it's again. I mean, that's our responsibility. I believe as human beings is to take note of terrible things happening around the world and to try to fight them. And that's what we do here more than I think. That's kind of billboarding why I think what we do here is a little different than even what Max is so important, right? Max tells us what's happening around the world, and we need to know. But, and this is what he said. I was like, well, what are we going to do? How do you propose that we stop these atrocities, these murders, this genocide? How do you propose we stop endless war? And he said, hey, I'm a reporter. That's my job. I'm a journalist. I just tell you what's happening. And that's paraphrasing it. And if this gets back to Max and I'm getting it wrong, please let me know. Call in. You're certainly always welcome. Obviously, to have a luminary like Max Blumenthal would be tremendous for me. But, he was pretty clear. He was like, hey, my job, what I consider myself to be, is a reporter. And I think he's an incredible reporter. And he goes around the world, or he has reporters working with him who report back to him. And they tell us about the awful things that are happening. But how we respond to it, I think, is ultimately up to us. And what we need to do is figure out how to stop this. Gaza death toll passes 62,700. Of course, that's the official number. The real count is unquestionably much higher. And now, of course, you see starvation gripping Gaza as well. So 11 more Palestinians in Gaza died of starvation. Famine-linked deaths to 300, including 117 children. It's as evil as it can possibly be, what Israel's doing. They're diabolical at this point. There's nothing. They're not human. Sadly, in a way, they are human because we have proven our ability to do the most horrific things to each other, to commit the cruelest, most savage acts against each other. And that's what we're seeing right now. Per Anadolu Agency, at least 62,744 Palestinians killed in Israel's genocidal war on the Gaza Strip since October 23, the health ministry said Monday. So there's your number. And that number, by the way, it's a big jump from Thursday because more bodies recovered, right? Bodies, they don't know how long they've been dead, how long they were, that they had been, lying in the rubble or unfound or had disappeared, and we didn't know where they were. But that gives you a flavor there. 622 more deaths than we reported Thursday. We didn't have a new number Friday. And we have 10,900 Gazans killed by Trump and Netanyahu alone. 324 more killed between today and Thursday, right? 324. The number's 324 higher now than it was Thursday. And in terms of killed, 324 more killed since Thursday, and the total deaths reported is 622 higher because of approximately 300 people. Corpses, dead people were found, killed by Israel. All right, 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. Stephanie, we need to join with DM25 because this has to be global, globalize the Intifada. BB sounds endearing. A better name would be Boo Boo, Doo Doo, fair enough. Even Dr. Stein, this is from Ari, was pushed around. Jill Stein mishandled like a rag doll last year. Yeah, it's horrific what the empire is doing. It's horrific. And I'll be mindful of that with terms of the nickname. I don't want to even suggest, because somebody you give someone a nickname, it's, people call me Hal. I don't know that means they like me. I've heard plenty of people say bad things. They can say that guy Hal's a real jerk. So it's not necessarily endearing, but I understand the point. I do. And I'm going to be very mindful of that because I don't want there to be any humanizing aspect of my coverage of the genocidal Jewish state prime minister. All right, let's get to the West Bell Town Hall. This is in St. Louis, and I'm going to start with the Forbes coverage. I want to really there's going to be a lot of different videos. I kind of want to compare a little bit. This is from Forbes. Mostly the videos, though, really were by just individuals, right? Citizen journalists, if you will, attendees who had their cell phones out. The corporate media has really not shown any of the violence that was perpetrated by Bell and or his minions. And that's because they're all on the same side. They're all on the pro-genocide, anti-peace side, the pro-AIPAC side. This is from Forbes. Let's get this clip up for you and see. I don't want it to be too loud. Here we go. So you can see right away how raucous it is. There's just people are just shouting out. They're just not wanting to hear. Now, why would they be so raucous? What's that? What's causing that? Well, Bell was in Israel. He went on the AIPAC-funded tour. I'm not going to show you the picture of him in the bunker. I showed you that last week. But this guy is known the most money in the last election cycle was received from AIPAC by Wesley Bell. He was their biggest recipient. He's in the Hall of Shame. Track AIPAC said he was the biggest, I guess, donor. He wasn't the biggest donor. He was the biggest donee. It's an extraordinary amount of money AIPAC funneled to his campaign. And this is clearly almost $8 million to defeat Cori Bush. Again, probably the most pro-Palestine, anti-genocide, anti-Israel non-Muslim Congress member. So that would exempt, obviously, Rashida Tlaib, Palestinian, and Ilhan Omar, who is Somali and Muslim. All right, let's get back to that town hall there. And again, just a lot of very raucous people. Just honestly, they're just fed up. They don't want to hear from Wes Bell. And who can blame them? They want him. Bottom line is his constituents, they want him, Bell, to hear them. And that's to really what town halls, I think, should be about to a very significant degree. a lot of Congress members don't want to have town halls because they do what they want. They do what they're paid to do by their real constituents, the dark money donors, the corporations, the billionaire backers. And so they don't want to hear from the public. They don't want to hear the blowback. They don't want to hear the complaints. They don't want to hear the criticism. Bell is here in front of his constituents in St. Louis, and they're not happy with him.
People who registered for tonight's challenge, your position on Gaza. People who registered for tonight's challenge, your position on Gaza.
So, what's your position on Gaza? That was she got it out, and here we go.
Raising concern about U.S. support for Israel doing what they describe as genocide.
So she says, the moderator says, doing what they describe, some of the people who submitted questions, what they describe as a genocide. And you heard, and I love this, the crowd saying, no, it is a genocide, not what we describe. That's what it is. So let's continue.
Of civilians facing starvation.
So now she says, how do you respond to the fact that civilians are facing starvation?
To those criticisms. And what do you believe America's role should be in this Congress, Congressman?
Well, let me answer the question. Are you going to answer the question? You're going to answer the question now.
So he's getting angry. He's like, you're going to let me answer the question now? You're going to listen to me? You're going to let me answer? And so he's getting pretty ticked off, as you can see. And we'll play some more.
You're going to let me answer the question, or you just going to scream and take up your attention? Thank you. Okay, now, so here's the thing. There are a lot of complicated issues about.
All right, so a lot of complicated. As soon as he said that, crowd's like, it's not complicated. It isn't. We just heard people being starved. Israel's preventing aid from getting in. They are bombing people. They have destroyed the entire area. They have the highest rate of civilian deaths, far worse. We in this country, the media, the Democratic Party never stops demonizing Russia. The civilian death count per casualty in Ukraine is far, far, far less than what Israel is doing in Gaza to the Palestinian people. And it's also far more clearly a genocide. I mean, it's not a genocide what Russia's doing. Russia's not trying to wipe the Ukrainian people off the map. Russia isn't killing Ukrainians in Russia. There are some Ukrainians who live in Russia in the just east of Ukraine. There are some Ukrainian speakers. North of Ukraine in Russia, there are Ukrainian speakers. Russia's not trying to kill them. They're not killing them. But Israel's killing Palestinians, whether they're in Gaza, whether they're in the West Bank. There are pogroms now and again in Israel, the nation, against Palestinians. So this is not complicated. This is a monstrous crime Israel's responsible for. And now the crowd won't, they're sick of it. And I totally sympathize, of course, because what other opportunities do you have to hold this creep accountable? You don't. You have no opportunity. So now after the, well, let's go to, this is what, this was posted by Cori Bush. So none of this is in the New York Times. I did a lot of Google searches and everything. No video from this event, no coverage as far as I can tell, CNN, MSNBC. This is a Democratic representative in Congress who's really, really, really hearing it from his constituents. Wouldn't you think those media outlets would cover this? Can you imagine if it was a Republican? Now, they might not, because it's Israel, and those outlets, to a significant degree, especially the New York Times, but they all protect Israel. They all have boards with very pro-Israel membership. Their advertisers, their sponsors, their money to a significant degree comes from Zionists. So they're just not going to cover this. But can you imagine if a Republican Congress member was getting it this aggressively? I believe the liberal media would cover it. But because it's a Democrat, they're not going to touch this with a 10-foot pole. Here's what Cori Bush has to say. Constituents were told to stay after Bell's town hall if they had questions. So we'll see the video of that. You can see a little clip below. They stayed and were brutalized. You hear over and over, the Washington Post had all this coverage of how Trump is cracking down in the D.C., bringing in federal troops. As far as I know, now the federal troops in L.A. have brutalized immigrant communities. They have rounded people up, some of whom are here legally. Some are citizens who have been caught up in the net. Generally, I believe they're let go. Those fish are ultimately let go, the catch and capture type style. But they are brutal. But what about our local law enforcement? This is the St. Louis police you're going to see video of, and private security. This is a democratic city that is brutalizing its people. And that's not just my word, that's Cori Bush. They stayed and were brutalized. As Trump deepens our country, it breaks my heart to see the same violence and anti-democratic tactic in St. Louis. St. Louis silence and violence are not representation. All right, let's get to that actual video. It took me a little time to put this because Instagram makes it really, really tough. But let me show the whole video if I possibly can. There we go. Let's go with this. So look at this. Just it opens right away. This is one of the attendants. I'm going to replay that. This extremely large man, by the way, this is the thumbnail that I have. Extremely large man, private security, it turns out. We'll learn a little bit more. And he's got his hand on the neck of a very small woman. This is terrifying. And, well, we'll play more. Let's play it. So here we go. Look at that. Look at him tossing her around. And look at the cop. The cop, so there's the cop in the foreground. There's two cops in the foreground. Let me try to make this a little bit bigger if I can. And I'm going to play it again because this is fascist. We talk about fascism in America. These are fascist police and security detail in the city of St. Louis, a democratic city. If you're going to fight fascism, if you're going to fight oligarchy, like Bernie and AOC say, then you got to fight this too. You can't just fight it when you don't like the perpetrator, when it's Trump, when it's Republicans. You got to fight it in every instance when it's coming up, or everyone will just view you as not just a phony, not just as a hypocrite, but someone who really doesn't even care about fascism as long as their people, their peeps, their insider group is committing it. That's fine. All right, one more time I'm going to play this because it's just terrifying. It's horrific. These are people who went to a town hall to talk to their federal representative, their Congress member. They were asked or told, as Cori Bush says, to stay if they wanted to talk to Wes Bell. And here's what happens to them after the Bell has left the stage. Now, look what that cop is doing. He's trying not to protect the woman who maybe she weighs 100 pounds and there's a football player, basically, like a 300-pound lineman's got his hand on her neck. And the cop isn't protecting the citizen. He's shoving out of the way somebody who's trying to protect her. And the man, the security deal, he's not even a cop. He's not a cop. He doesn't have the right to arrest somebody. But who is the cop keeping for protecting? The security thug. And now he shoves him to the ground. So it's not just the security. Pulled to the ground. And then more violence. So they're saying you got to leave the building. The building's closed. But look at the way, there's, by the way, a Palestinian flag there you can see. Just shoving people, pushing them violently, man, throttling. It's a little person there. And now it's just become a complete scrum, totally out of control. He says, get up. Get up. That's what they're yelling at these people that they just bashed around brutally. This was last week, the 19th. So that would be tomorrow a week. Nothing. I looked. I mean, I might have missed it. If I'm wrong, tell me, please. Send me a link. Put it in the chat. What have you? CNN. Nothing. Can you imagine? I mean, this is a huge, am I wrong? Is this not an incredibly important story? That you can't go to a town hall held by your representative without getting beaten up if you ask questions they don't like? Am I wrong? Or is that something that maybe media should cover? And it doesn't. They don't. Because they're on the side of the thugs. They're on the side of the cops. They're on the side of the genociders. The people who get the $12.7 million from Israel. That's whose side they're on, not on your side. We don't live in a democracy. But it isn't just because of Trump. Trump is a symptom, a very, very obvious, broad symptom of a society that's absolutely imploding, falling apart. We are approaching failed state status at this point. By the way, I did not test my phone, so I hear it ringing. You may hear it too. So if you call in, I will get your call. And again, the thumbnail, just real quick, it's on, right? Because you could see, right? That's a real, it's a melee. It's a melee. It's on, but it's not on CNN. It's not on MSNBC. It's not on NYT. I didn't say it's not on Fox because I don't think anyone expects, MSN. And yet Fox is often more willing to cover pro-peace rallies and events. I don't know if anyone in NYT, MSNBC, or I don't think there's anyone on NYT, whatever, on MSNBC, on CNN, who's been as pro-peace, as anti-Ukraine war as Tucker. I mean, that's how bad your, quote, liberal, unquote, media is, that they're actually not. They're worse than Fox in some respects. That's just how awful they are. So we see an incredibly brutal attack by representative of a Democratic congressman, and nothing is said in the media that we kind of, I think, might expect to cover this. The newspaper of record, the New York Times, all the news that fit to print, nothing. There was a lot of chatter online. We're going to hear from the Congressman Wesley Bell in a moment, but there was a lot of chatter online. Who was that? The big guy, right? Who had his hand on the small woman's neck. Who was he? And you can see him in that picture. You see the white shirt. That means that's an officer, that cop. I mean, like, when I say officer, I don't mean like just a patrol officer. I mean a captain or lieutenant. The white shirts are the lieutenants, the captains. So that's a big shot in the St. Louis Police Department. And he's in front of the man we saw manhandling, assaulting. That's all right. Let's just say assaulting and battering, right? And according to St. Louis Public Radio, they did cover it, right? I said there was no, that St. Louis Public Radio covered this. Some of the St. Louis news TV stations cover this. Affinia Healthcare, that's who, it's sort of weird, like that's the guy's a healthcare guy, places staffer on leave. So he was apparently, the security detail was provided by Affinia Healthcare. It's kind of an Orwellian name, right? For people who much more likely than providing some sort of support, some sort of health care, actually put you in the hospital. But that staffer was placed on leave. He wasn't fired and he wasn't arrested. We all saw that brutal assault. He wasn't arrested. Now, you might, sometimes you see stuff on video and you're like, well, is it self-defense? Who started it? That gentleman, and I use the term very loosely, the man in this picture, the green shirt, he literally, and I do not believe this is an exaggeration, was 3 times the size of the woman he was throttling. And police did nothing. There was no arrest, nothing. Now, sometimes, like I said, it might be self-defense. What defense? What self-defense? She didn't have a weapon. We didn't see any. It's a reaction. We are seeing a reaction by the elites, the people with power. They don't want you to question what they're doing. If you do question what they're doing, they're going to sick their goon squad on you. And that includes the police. That includes private security. We don't live in a democracy. We don't have freedom. And that is across the board, not just because of the control of the federal government by the Republicans and Trump. All right, 240-242-5646. As I mentioned, I do this because I want us to come up with solutions. I want us to come up with answers. I want us to figure out a way to work together to stop this. And I don't know who else does it. I know the Democrats are trying. By the way, I promise you I will get to the Icarus Fest, which was in New Jersey. But I also wanted to just play a little bit from this Fighting Oligarchy event. Now, remember, the video I just showed you was August 19, right? So that was Tuesday in St. Louis. Bernie and Delia Ramirez, who's an Illinois congresswoman, and I think she's Illinois, right? Is she California? I think she's Illinois. And this guy, Robert Peters, who's an Illinois state legislator, were at the event. Now, interestingly, and I was a little surprised, who wasn't there? AOC. But I guess she was busy. I don't know. Who knows? She doesn't have to be there. It's part of their Fighting Oligarchy tour. This is Sunday. Now, wouldn't you expect at this Fighting Oligarchy event, they would talk about what happened on the other side of the state, right? St. Louis is just across the river from Illinois. From East St. Louis is actually Illinois. So they're up in the north, I guess it says Chicago, so they're up in the northeast corner of the state. St. Louis is the southwest, just on the other side of East St. Louis, in the sort of the southwest corner. It's not really all the way down. It's not that far. Wouldn't you think they would mention that the oligarchy really doesn't like being challenged? Because there's no question, but the war on Gaza that we're funding, supplying the weapons, that's the oligarchy. The weapons manufacturers, Wall Street, the billionaire class. And it's bought and paid for representatives. Both parties. Obviously, Wes Bell's Democrat. Wouldn't you think that they would bring this up at their Fighting Oligarchy? This is happening in the United States. This isn't happening across the globe halfway around the world. It's right here in our nation. Shouldn't they talk about it? They don't mention it. Doesn't come up once. You know who else doesn't come up? Zoran Mamdani. You want to fight oligarchy? Who's fighting him more than Zoran Mamdani? Name doesn't come up. Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck, none of them. Play a little bit. Here's Delia Ramirez. I actually kind of like Delia Ramirez. I don't hate Delia Ramirez. She's one of the better. I won't even say she's one of the least bad Dems. She's actually not awful. But they still get everything wrong. This is not how you win. Let's play it.
Delia Catalina Ramirez, your congresista, proudly representing...
Your congresista. That's what she says. Your congresista. And yeah, she is Illinois. I get it. You're proud of your Latina heritage. I totally understand. We're trying to build a movement. Democrats lost votes in 24 across the board. You lost. I was amazed. I was watching a video, just to digress for a moment. 2016 election from Rachel Maddow, who was, whatever, heartbroken. I mean, I don't know if she could have cared less who won that election. She certainly pretended. I mean, her ratings soared. She got to make her bones by beating up on Trump every night for 4 years, every weeknight. And a lot of times, with BS, not that Trump doesn't deserve it, but she didn't do her exposés were generally a load of crap. But she was kind of regurgitating the results and trying to explain why Trump won. And she said in 2016, well, yes, Trump did get more black votes than the Republicans, than Mitt Romney and McCain had gotten 4 and 8 years earlier. So there was some slight shift. This is 2016, not 24. Some slight shift to Trump among black voters. And he did better with Latino voters, for sure. Hillary did worse with Latinos than Obama. But the real reason that Trump won is because there was a massive shift in white voters to Trump. So it's just racism. So what we saw in 2016 and what we saw in 24, we saw black voters moving to Trump. A small minority, but, well, somewhat significant. We saw a much more sizable number of Latinos moving to Trump. And we saw the white vote move to Trump. So basically everyone, every group, every demo moved towards Trump, both in 2016 and in 2024. What that tells me is that if you want to defeat Trump, you don't play these slice them and dice them constituency games. Oh, well, I'm your congresista. No, you're a congresswoman in Illinois who's fighting for every single American. That's what you say. So and she does, you know what, like, I don't want to be too harsh on Delia Ramirez because she has been good on Palestine, better than the others anyways. But they so don't get it. They so don't know how to win.
I need backup in that House of Representatives, and I think we're going to have that in Robert Peters. Woo! Good evening, Chicago. Buenas noches. Welcome to Senator Sanders' Fight Oligarchy Tour here in the best city in the country, Chicago. I'm Delia Catalina Ramirez, your congresista, proudly representing the mighty 3rd Congressional District. And the most important thing for you to know about me, it's not my title, is that I'm a proud daughter of Guatemalan immigrants, Luis and Maria Ramirez.
Oh, I'm going to stop it there. The most important thing to know about Delia Ramirez. I want you to think about how this comes across to Americans. I don't care if you're of Guatemalan descent, you're whatever, any American. The most important thing, according to Delia Ramirez, the first thing she says is to know that I'm a proud daughter of Guatemalan immigrants. That to me is such an unforced error. That is not the most important thing to Americans. That is not the most important thing to the children of Guatemalan immigrants. That is not the most important thing to Guatemalan immigrants. The most important thing to the American voter is what policies are you going to push? What are you going to propose in Congress? What are you going to fight for? What are you going to fight against? What are you going to go to the mat for? How are you going to try to rally other representatives to your side on important issues? What are those issues, as I mentioned? And if you can't get legislation passed that you deem really important, how are you going to change the makeup of Congress so that it will pass those bills that you support? That's the most important thing by so much. Otherwise, no one gives a crap. They just don't care. They care what you're going to do. So for you to come on stage and tout yourself as a congresista from Guatemala or from, Guatemalan immigrants as the most important thing, you just turned off 350 million Americans. And I would vote for you. I will vote for you if I have that. If you ran for president, Delia Ramirez, you're one of the few Democrats I would vote for. But you so blew that opening. Let's play a little more because it gets better.
I am a citizen by birthright, an unapologetic defender of our immigrant communities, an unwavering champion of
Now you know that statement. Okay, I think we should support our immigrant 100% with that. But do you want to win elections? Lots of Americans, including, if not the immigrants themselves, but a lot of immigrants too, they kind of sort of like Trump's policies. They'll say, I've heard this over and over. Well, I came here legally. I followed all the rules. Now, there's a lot of ways to respond to that. It used to be easier to get into this country. You didn't have to run the same gauntlet. Even if you were able to come in legally, others have not had that opportunity. They shouldn't be locked up. They shouldn't be separated from their families. They shouldn't be sent to some gulag, some torture chamber. There's lots of answers to that. But Americans aren't, on balance, big champions of what some call illegal immigrants. I don't think this is where you want to lead if you want to win elections, if you want to bring people over to your side.
A fighter for peace in a country obsessed with war.
All right, so now that's a great line. Let's play that again, although even there, not loving her language.
I'm Delia Catalina Ramirez, your congresista, proudly representing the mighty 3rd Congressional District. And the most important thing for you to know about me, it's not my title, is that I'm a proud daughter of Guatemalan immigrants, Luis and Maria Ramirez. I am a citizen by birthright, an unapologetic defender of our immigrant communities, an unwavering champion of shared humanity and human rights, and a fighter for peace in a country obsessed with war.
All right, so fighter for peace, shared humanity. That's good. Americans want peace. We want peace in Ukraine. We most certainly want peace in Gaza. And we want an end to the Israeli killing in Gaza. So this is a good issue. This is one she should be focusing on. But I wouldn't have said a country obsessed with war. See, again, that's blaming the voters. She should say, I'm a proud supporter of peace in a government obsessed with war, paid for by warmongers, by weapons manufacturers. We've got to get them out. We've got to take them out because the voters agree with you on this. So don't blame the country. Congresswoman Ramirez, blame Congress, blame Trump, blame the people who buy up the politicians, blame AIPAC. That's where you should go with that. But it's a good issue. Let me play just a little more. I'm going to move on.
A member of Congress who comes from a working class family, fighting for my working class neighbors, demanding that Trump, his billionaire bosses, and all of the oligarchs profiting off the suffering of our communities get their hands off our health care, our housing, our land, our climate, our elections, our neighbors, and our futures.
All right, I'll stop it there. It's not terrible, but again, it's not perfect either. And it shouldn't be hard to get this perfect. So what Ramirez did there is go after Trump and say, get your hands off of this. But what she should be doing even more so is saying, I'm going to fight for healthcare. I'm going to fight to make sure you get Medicare for all. I'm going to make sure you get a living wage. And Democrats haven't been great on this. To acknowledge it, to admit it. Too many in our party are co-opted by the billionaire class, are corrupted. That's how you win. That's how we win. When you see yourself as representing the people, your constituents, not your party. That's how we win. I'll play the Bernie clip. I mean, it wasn't, again, they're sort of getting it around the edges, but they can't and they refuse to and they will not fight for you. They'll only fight against Trump, but they're not going to fight for you. And that's why they're going to keep losing. And it's because they're bought and paid for, like Wesley Bell, right? By AIPAC.
Ashes in the White House and when our democracy is on the line. For me, everything the Trump administration and their billionaire bosses are doing, cutting services Americans rely on, perpetrating mass deportations, attacking workers and their rights, persecuting human rights defenders, deploying the National Guard to democratic cities, undermining our civil rights, and yes, the genocide of the Palestinian people is all connected.
Right, so I agree. I mean, her message is strong there. But again, it's negative. This is what they're doing, which is true. She's right. And it's all connected, including genocide, taking away what few rights workers have left, all of that, taking away health care, all of that, it's connected. But the vision thing, it's missing, it's lacking. There's a little bit from Bernie later on. It's not the end. I don't say they're terrible. But if we really are living in such a fraught time, which we are, things are that bad, you can't be fighting with one hand tied behind your back. You can't say, well, I'm going to only punch to my right. And when I say to my far right, and that would be Trump, I'm not going to punch to my right, which would be the rest of the Democrat Party. You can't do that or you lose. We lose. Okay, I want to get to, and again, this is why we do here, as we talk about solutions. And the solution has to be taking on the Democratic Party. If Democrats won't take on their own party, we know they won't. We know they simply will not do it. They won't call out other Democrats. There was not one word about the thugs at the Wesley Bell Townhall. Yes, she talked about genocide. She didn't talk about the support for it in her own party. She only blamed it on Trump, even though her president, her vice president, were all in for genocide. So when they were, Harris Biden, I mean. So what we do here is we try to come up with solutions. And the solutions are outside the Democratic Party with few, if any, exceptions. Ramirez is close to an exception. She's pretty good. She's not good enough. Let's go to Rutherford, New Jersey. And the moderator we're going to hear from, his name is Thaddeus Stevens. I guess he's a contributor. This was a gray zone event. And they weren't all gray zone people, right? So Sabby Sabs was there. She's not in the gray zone. Katie Halper was there. She's not in the gray zone, although she does a video with Aaron Mate, who is part of the gray zone. She does a podcast called Useful Idiots with Aaron. So, I mean, these people have connections, and they're all very progressive on the left. I was not familiar with Thaddeus Russell. I don't think. I may have seen him on a few videos, but he was the moderator. We'll hear from him, but just a quick background on him. This guy has got some real academic chops, a heck of a lot more than I do. He teaches history and cultural studies at Occidental College. I think that's in Los Angeles. And he's taught at Columbia, Barnard, I don't know where Eugene Lang College is, New School. He's from Berkeley. So he's written books. He's not a real Democrat. I mean, he's kind of a Howard Zinn type. Very, very, I wouldn't call him an anarchist at all, but he seems skeptical of democracy, let's put it that way. And that's where he and where we got into our disagreement, or I got into a disagreement with him. So let me play the clip first. There's a couple of clips. Maybe it's just one. Maybe it's two. I'm not sure. But they're talking about so much of this conference, this Icarus Fest, was dedicated to Gaza. I think that was kind of a sub-theme, or the theme, or peace was the theme, but this was a sub-theme, was how do we end the American-Israeli genocide? Can we end it? And here's how they, a professor, we'll get to how Professor Russell. Thaddeus Stevens was an abolitionist. I keep thinking of Thaddeus Stevens. Thaddeus Russell, we'll hear from him and how he thinks the genocide could be ended.
Broadly, I mean, among the so-called normies, I mean, do you see, I'm trying to think myself.
That's Stevens, by the way, talking there. He's got the mic in his mouth. And there's a guy on the video as well in the three people panel.
Do you see any movement among non-political Americans who know just about nothing about the world around?
So I thought this was very condescending. This really, see, and this is a problem for me because I get so frustrated, even with people who are sort of on my side, because certainly Thaddeus Russell and I totally abhor what Israel's doing. We think it's a terrible crime. We hate it. We hate what our country's become. So when it comes to the biggest picture, Thaddeus Russell and I agree. But the contempt that I hear in his voice, what he calls normies who don't know anything, that just ticks me off. That's just like Delia Ramirez. What did she say? The most important thing about me, and this is a country obsessed with war. Don't treat the American people. Don't treat your constituents like children or dismissively. She says the America's obsessed with war. Well, America's the American people, and I don't think Americans are. I think we're over it. We're tired of it. We agree with you. We want peace. Don't mischaracterize our views. And here, Russell's even worse. Basically saying Americans are ignorant, don't know anything. I mean, there's truth to that, I guess, of course, but treat people with respect. Educate folks. Most Americans actually are against Israel now. Most Americans recognize how wrong the genocide is. They recognize it's a genocide. It's not the fault of the people. It's the fault of the misleadership class.
I don't know.
I think you see movement on Gaza, on just the live stream genocide. I think for anyone with a conscience, it's kind of impossible to see these videos and not be moved. In terms of, is there a burgeoning anti-imperialist consciousness that's going to seep out of the woods of Virginia? Probably not today or tomorrow, but
see, I don't get that. That just doesn't compute for me. You have Marjorie Taylor Greene in rural North Georgia saying our money shouldn't be going to kill people in Gaza. Our money shouldn't be going to prolong a war in Ukraine. She says it out loud. She said exactly what he said in one way. She said, hey, a lot of my constituents, they don't know where Ukraine is. They're not going to find it on a map, but they know that our money, their billions of dollars, shouldn't be going there. So that's the argument you make. This is not a strategic imperative for us. This is not relevant to American lives. This is actually hurting us, costing us by spending all this money. We shouldn't be doing it. It's costing lives. It's also hurting us. So I was really taken aback by that discussion. And then there's more here. So let me play this. This is and remember what I'm about more than anything else. What Halitics is about is trying to make things a little bit better, solving the worst problems we have, whether it's stopping endless war, cutting drastically our burning fossil fuels, our consumption of fossil fuels, so we can end, or at least, can't really end the climate holocaust, but at least stop it from getting even worse. That's what we're about here. And here, Thaddeus Russell, the professor from Occidental, talks about ending genocide, ending American war.
Broadly, I mean, among the so-called normies, I mean, do you see, I'm trying to think myself,
Let me play this clip.
Do you see any...
See if I can. Let's see if this is the same one.
Broadly, I mean, among the so-called normies... I mean,
let me jump ahead. Sorry, folks, just a little bit, because he... Here we go.
Basically be arrested and manhandled by these counterterrorism police because that they believe it's worth standing up and fighting for. I'm not sure we've reached that kind of moment in the U.S. yet, but what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty pessimistic. Again, it's astonishing how ignorant Americans are about politics.
All right, so I just find that this professor, it's astonishing how ignorant. I don't think Americans are ignorant. We just saw a town hall in St. Louis, in the heartland, all those folks standing up saying no to genocide. And I understand they're not a representative family and blah, blah, blah. But no, that's so wrong. See, this is why I problems for me, because I'm trying to be with people that I sort of view as fellow travelers on the same road to a better world. And you hear this contempt, how stupid or ignorant we are, supposedly.
World politics? I mean, they don't know where these countries are. Have you seen maps? These studies of Americans are asked to point on a map where certain countries are, and they put Ukraine and Alaska, and they put Iran and Hawaii, and I mean, so yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. We could get into a long discussion about elite theory, but I think the elites will have to be forced to change one way or the other. Okay. What's going to happen is not, and I think Kit will appreciate this, and I think all of you will appreciate this. I don't believe the American people are going to rise up, or even if they're going to rise up and convince our leaders to change their course in American foreign policy. I just think the only thing that's going to change the American empire from doing what it's doing is what the Viet Cong did, which is to defeat them on the battlefield. I don't see any other way. And that's why the so-called axis of resistance in the Middle East, I think, is so crucial. That's why I think the war in Ukraine is so crucial. I think that because Russia is, from my point of view, offering one thing is resistance to the empire. And what we do see is a mounting axis of resistance globally, right?
So he's saying, it's obvious. I don't really have to paraphrase it or characterize it, but, basically the Nazis were stopped by the Allies, right? It wasn't within Germany, it was without. So that the only way to defeat these terrible crimes, or to end the crimes of the United States, Israel, its proxy, if you want to say Israel's our proxy, or we're Israel's proxy, I don't know. According to Thaddeus Russell, we have to defeat the United States, the American empire, NATO on the battlefield. And, I was really irritated by that response in a lot of ways. But, and it sounds like he's rooting for Russia to beat us, maybe kind of. I don't want to put those words. And I'll be honest with you, I would love to see Hamas at this point, and I'm not saying I have any love for Hamas, but I would love to see them defeat Israel. I would have loved to have seen Iran, really, really give it to Israel and see Israel suffer dramatically to lose its military capacity. I think that would make our world better. I'm not sure defeating the U.S., a hegemonic Russia or a hegemonic China would be much of an improvement over a hegemonic United States. Russia is an autocracy. We deserve some of the blame for that. We could have promoted democracy. We didn't. But, and he's not saying that would be such a great thing, but he's saying the only way to stop this, the United States was a world-destroying empire, which kind of it is, we are, is to defeat us on the battlefield. And I was, we were allowed to ask questions. I raised my hand. He didn't call on me, which I was annoyed by. But I did buttonhole him afterwards, and I said, so you're saying, I wanted to be sure I understood what you're saying. So you're saying there's no potential democratic solution. You're saying we shouldn't try to elect Mamdani, right? Because he's not going to stop the empire. The only way to stop the empire, according to this professor, is on the battlefield. So to me, what he's saying is join the Russian army, right? He said, well, the exciting thing about Russia, at least they're fighting the U.S. So are you saying we should join the Russian army? Is that your answer? Because I think it kind of sounds like it is. It's a complete nihilistic view. There's no possible democratic solution. Now, if we were in Israel, I might agree. I don't know that there's a democratic solution in Israel. Israel seems pretty determined on genocide, right? Ethnic cleansing, maybe they would call it. But regardless, if not killing every Palestinian, at least completely depopulating Gaza, whether that means, and the West Bank, both, taking complete control, whether that means killing the Palestinians or moving them somewhere else, which is a form of genocide. That seems to be what the Israeli people want. Now, I think we could bring democracy. I think there can be political change, but only if there's a one-state solution. That's why I support it, a one-state solution, where everyone has civil rights from the river to the sea. The same rights, equal rights, economic justice. So I think that is a political solution. And I don't agree that the only way to stop American empire is to defeat the United States on the battlefield. I reject that analysis. I do think that if we unite, I'm not saying we will, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think it's a lot more likely to happen, and the end would be a lot better if we united to elect Mamdani, if we united to elect Shama Sawant, the independent running against a Democrat, Adam Smith, a pro-war, pro-genocide Democrat in Washington State, Seattle. I think we can defeat the empire if we start electing Andy Ellis's in Maryland and Butch Ware's in California, Green Party candidates. And I think we even see that there is some acknowledgement among some Democrats that the electorate doesn't agree with the current policy. So you heard Delia Ramirez use the term genocide. You heard Catherine Clark use that word as well until she completely walked it back under pressure, obviously, from AIPAC, her AIPAC minder. But I reject this notion that there's no democratic solution. Now, I did confront Russell with this point, and I said, so you're saying we shouldn't even try to elect Mamdani? He said, oh, well, it's a good thing to try. So I said, why? Why is it a good thing to try? If you're saying that there's no way to change the policies of the empire except to defeat it on the battlefield, what would be the purpose of electing a Mamdani? So he didn't have an answer. He just sort of hemmed and hawed. He didn't give an answer. What would be the point of trying to elect a Shama Sawant? So he said, well, I'm just saying that the anti-war movement didn't get us out of Vietnam. It was the Viet Cong defeating us on the battlefield. I think he said that in that clip I played. I don't agree with that history. Yes, the U.S. was stalled. Yes, bombing Cambodia was a disaster. They didn't defeat us. They didn't circle our armies, take them prisoner. It was a long, ugly stalemate. And the anti-war movement actually did play a role. There were more and more representatives in Congress who thought, well, you know what? There's a political price I got to pay if I keep voting for more, to send more troops. We're seeing young men mostly coming home in body bags. This isn't going over well. The public opinion was shifting against the Vietnam War. So I don't even agree that there wasn't some component of popular will that led to the withdrawal of American troops from Vietnam. It wasn't the Viet Cong defeating the American army. The Viet Cong ultimately defeated the South Vietnamese army after the U.S. had withdrawn. So I don't even accept his history. But even if I did accept his history, to a degree, that wouldn't persuade me that the only way to stop, I mean, because ultimately the American withdrawal from Vietnam didn't end American empire. We didn't pull our bases from other countries. We still have hundreds, and I think it was like over 800 bases in foreign countries. We exercise tremendous influence over Southeast Asia even now. Even if our armies aren't occupying or standing up a regime there. So I reject that idea that there can't be any democratic answers to American empire. And I find that extremely frustrating, disappointing, wrong-headed, misguided. The answer is we have to fight together. We have to get to a place where we are all united as on the left. We're speaking as one for pro-peace, pro-Medicare for all, pro-economic justice, pro-populist, progressive candidates. And they're not in the Democratic Party, with very, very few exceptions. All right, I was going to talk a little bit about my former organization where I worked, Our Revolution, and how I feel that they're betraying this notion, how their continued efforts to prop up the Democratic Party, to present the Democratic Party as a potential partner in the fight for justice, how that effort is undermining the cause, right? But we've gone over an hour. I try to limit myself to an hour. I can get to that topic tomorrow. I've got clips. Thank you so much. I want to just thank everyone so much. Thanks you for, if you post, if you comment on Facebook, it really, or on YouTube especially, it really, really helps. Don't forget, let me give that push one more time. Do subscribe. Subscribe now. Makes such a difference. If you already are a subscriber, even if you're not a subscriber, subscribe, but also comment and share, man. Share that video wherever you can. If you think people will respond to what I'm doing here. Because yeah, it's really that important. I think it is. Why else would I do this? I mean, that's the point. We gotta try to make things better. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks so much for being part of Halitics.